to all. I'm Vonnie Roudette, and we're here for another amazing interaction with a filmmaker at the Hairouna Film Festival 2021. Tonight we had some incredible films for the environmental film night, and it culminating with Michael Lee's film documentary Uncivilized. An extraordinary film, a pioneering, groundbreaking film. We're going to be discussing that from all aspects, I hope, and we'll welcome questions from the audience by the chat box. But I'll briefly introduce Michael as a great friend and collaborator who I first worked with last year in Dominica. Michael, when was that? September, for a few months anyway, we were working together. And so, whereas a lot of people were introduced to Michael through his film and seeing him on screen, I worked with him. I was introduced to him as a filmmaker, and it's been an amazing collaboration. And there's loads of questions that I hope to get to ask you this evening that I've never had the opportunity to do before. So, Michael, would you like to just lead us in with an introduction, obviously, about you and your work, but specifically focused on tonight's film, Uncivilized?
Let me try and do this succinctly. So if you've seen the film, in a nutshell, I went out to live in the forest, sort of with this premise that maybe all of the problems we're in right now, like climate change, separation from ourselves, separation from nature, all of these things were a result of our want for more that could never be satiated. And so to try and strip away all the sort of like sense pleasures and sort of like daily amenities, modern amenities we're used to, and to try and move back to something more akin to what our original life on Earth would have been, albeit with cameras and solar chargers. Halfway through, Hurricane Maria hits, Category 5 Hurricane Maria. As you can see, I survived, and then essentially got to continue filming. And while the film changed, in many ways stayed the same, because a lot of the themes came back up. Now, all of Dominica was essentially living similarly to how I was living, which was no electricity, no running water, no supermarkets, no banks, none of that stuff. But I think we were able to get by surprisingly, I'd say remarkably well. And I think in part of that, it was because we had not abandoned or had not lost the knowledge of how to live off of the land and how to live with the land, and also have not got to the point where we have polluted our rivers and our springs. So people still had their backyard gardens. We still had fresh spring water. We went and we washed our clothes in the river. We understand why we smoke meats and salt fish, because without refrigeration, these are ways of preserving these things. And I will say, absolutely, we were able to benefit from having international help. And that's one of, I would say, the big benefits of our more modern connected world. But again, in many ways, we're able to do it quite well on our own and in small communities.
Fantastic. About the film itself, which I would see as an art form in itself, what I find so fascinating about it is that you, through a sort of living adventure that encapsulates all the emotions, you reflect the sort of essence of Caribbean culture in a way, in that you deal with, the struggle, the loss, the suffering, the hardship, the resilience, and the spirit of Dominican people and Caribbean people, it reflected in our history. And that struggle comes through the film. It really comes through the film, but also what comes through the film itself is created out of this experience, you know, and in this way I feel it's reflecting sort of the essence of our heritage, which is to create out of what we have, just utilizing what we have. In your case, you created out of less than what we have. You created out of loss, you created out of destruction, and you created out of all that was left, the human voice, the human feelings, the human connection. And in that sense, I just feel it's such a powerful film, and it reflects our history almost in its totality in a way. So there's lots of questions I'd like to ask you about that aspect of it, and how doing that impacted, firstly, your own life, your daily life as it is now, like 3.5 years later after the hurricane. How did that experience impact? It's probably a changing impact, but I'd just like to hear a little bit about how you sort of incorporated that experience and those lessons learned into how you live on a daily basis now.
So lots of good questions. First thing that comes to mind is just hearing the things that people said right after the hurricane. And they would say things like, I've lost everything, but I have life. Or they'd say, you know, this is all just material things, but we have water, we have food, we'll survive. And to hear these sorts of things after such a disaster, to me, that was more powerful than, for instance, like people ask me if surviving the hurricane in the forest changed me. That's not what changed me the most. It was hearing those kinds of things in what seemed like an apocalyptic scene, and then just made me appreciate and love Dominica and Dominicans even more. And I had, you know, to do this project, I had come back from school in the States, and I was kind of thinking, you know what, I'm going to do this project, and then maybe I'll use that as a platform, and maybe I have a UK citizen. I was thinking of going off to the UK, but there was something about after Maria that just like cemented me in Dominica and my love for Dominica. In terms of how it has affected my day-to-day, I think the whole experience from being in the forest to the time after Maria is learning to appreciate the little things and realizing that how much there is to appreciate, to give thanks for all the time. But it's not our natural, I'd say it's our natural state, but it's not our conditioned state. I feel like we sort of live in a world where we're conditioned not to be satisfied so that we can be essentially perpetual consumers, which also means that spiritually we're never satisfied. But if you can realize the sort of bounty that is always being provided and give thanks for those things, then I think you free yourself in many ways. And I would say all in all, I think part of what this experience did, it made me realize that trusting my intuition is always the right thing to do. And also that once you find the stuff that you're really passionate about, you can easily work 12 or 14 hours around the clock because it's no longer work. And I think that once you can do that in whatever you're doing, then you're bound to succeed or do better than a lot of other people because you're in it for the right reasons.
I think that's beautiful, and I think that is such a powerful message to send out to our sisters and brothers and young people throughout the region in terms of preparing us and strengthening our resilience for the various socio-economic challenges and environmental challenges that we face. Another question about sort of on similar lines, but with a particular focus on the practical and the skills that you had to apply to your experience in the forest. Did you have any background in those skills before, and what did the experience of making things to survive, making the things you need, looking for the basic thing, how did that impact you, having lived in a city and grown up in, you know, I guess a more residential environment? How has that impacted your daily life now as well?
Mm-hmm. So I say, as most Dominicans, I still had some experience of using a cutlass and fishing and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there was still plenty I didn't know. And there's a particular book. I bought a few books. There was one particular one that was really useful. And I mentioned earlier, I'm putting together some resources on my website, michaelleesmedia.com. I'm going to put some of that book and some others on there. And then also, you know, talking to people that had the knowledge here, and going out to the Kalinago territory, actually, to learn how to make like a fish pot out of natural materials. But all in all, I think one of the things it showed me is that, especially out, like not under the eyes of everyone else, and being able to make mistakes and being in the forest alone, that, and just having a manual and being like, you can learn just about anything. I don't know about for you guys, I feel like at least in Dominica, if someone knows something and you don't know how to do it, or you're doing it not quite right, their first thing to do is kind of ridicule you. So then you kind of shy away from doing it. But I think this experience made me just be like, okay, I can make fire. I can build a shelter out of bamboo with my bare hands. I can do all of these things. And once you realize you can do certain things that you didn't know you couldn't do before, then you can take that and apply that to so many other things. Just about everything. I mean, obviously there's some things no, but just about everything, it's within our potential to be able to do. And it's just not about getting that traction to then have confidence to apply that to the next challenge.
Great, which leads me to my next question, which is, how did that experience impact particularly on your filmmaking subsequently post Uncivilized? What did you take with that experience of filming in those conditions? Filming, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, you got it.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
Well, so filming in the forest, it's like I was charging off of solar, using a solar charger and a power bank. So I could not film everything, which meant that I had to be selective with what I shot, which made me just think about what I was shooting a little bit more. And I spent a good amount of time actually writing and trying to figure out where the story is going so I could have an idea of what to shoot. But I think the biggest thing, like this was my first time doing a big project, and the biggest thing was organization. Like I literally, I have all my files organized by what week, what camera, and then literally a spreadsheet with every single thing labeled of, you know, what the scene is, what the action is, what's going on, so that when I inevitably need to search through and find fire shot, then I can just search through my Excel sheet and do that. And I think prior to that, organization was not a strong skill of mine. I think it's that case for a lot of artists, actually. But I think that, and then also having to do my own crowdfunding and do my own marketing, all of a sudden, it's like I finally picked up the discipline, the organization, and the business skills, I think, to now be a freelancer or start my own small production company and keep things running efficiently.
Does this suggest a new approach to education? You know, whereas young people should.
I was just about to ask that, man, because it seems like, Michael, you have a formula there. You went through this really massive experience, both as a human being and a filmmaker. and you've come out of it with so much more. How 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 does that inform? Is it like a model you're thinking of? I heard you mention your website. Can you just expand a little bit on it?
Yeah. So, well, right now on my website, I'm trying to put together basically a couple different roadmaps. So, one is filmmaking and photography books. As I think Ackley mentioned earlier, since it's a new industry in our part of the Caribbean, it can be hard to find teachers or mentors. So I've had to do a lot of reading, and there's a lot of stuff that's bomb and a lot of stuff that's great. So I'm now trying to just narrow that down and present people with basically with the roadmaps, with the keys. It's up to everyone else if you want to put in the work to figure this stuff out, but at least I can give a roadmap of how far I am so far. Um, I would also say, again, talking about traditional and indigenous type cultures, there often were these sorts of rites of passage between adolescence and adulthood. And I think that that is kind of missing in our society. A book that I read that I really appreciated was called Island by Aldous Huxley. He's usually known for Brave New World, which is his dystopian book, but his final book is a utopian counterpoint. And one of the things that the kids have to do to transition from adolescence to adulthood is they have to do this like rock climbing exercise. There are ropes, but it requires teamwork and obviously this sort of actual danger. And then they actually go on they basically go on a mushroom trip, a psychedelic trip, essentially, right after having done this life or death type experience. And that's their initiation. In another book called, not another book, a film, Embrace of the Serpent, I think it was that one or one of the others. A lot of times the adolescents would have to go on a journey out into the forest alone and either get it, like in the trailer it says, either some get lost and never return, or you return sort of as a new person. So I do think it's interesting that we have, and I've heard other people talk about it, that we have something missing in terms of rites of passage or rituals. And I think it doesn't have to be something like this exactly, but I do think something like that could probably benefit a lot of people.
Well, since you're on the topic of rite of passage and stuff, I saw on the credits that you were listed as an editor for your film. Was there some kind of cathartic experience editing this film for you? Did it was it like a full 360? What was that experience like as an editor?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. It was a film like this. Would have found it really hard not to have been an editor. I know certain times people are like, you know what, you don't want to edit your own film, but in a film like this, so much of the structure was made in the edit room that if I didn't edit it, I don't know exactly how it would work out, because to be honest, there are parts that say, it's day this or day that, but it's lots of different parts of different days put together, so that there's actually a sort of a narrative that you can follow along. But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just to interject there. Sorry about that. Did in the editing process, then you were saying that you'd learned to use your intuition and trust your intuition through that whole experience. Did that come into the editing process then as well?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, that's a good one. Because there were many times, especially writing narration, where I would write it over and over and over, and I'd have like 10 pages, and all I need is a paragraph, and I've written this thing like 10 different ways. And then also, you're reaching out to different people for advice, and different people are giving you different advice. And then that's when you kind of realize that with any sort of endeavor like this, you truly are alone, because as much as people can give you advice, you then still have to digest it and trust yourself of which advice makes sense and which you want to incorporate. So yeah, again, learning some more of that intuitive process.
Yeah, well, also I saw that in the movie you were, you know, what you took a lot of spiritual books and everything with you, you know, like
Hmm.
different types of books and everything. Just wondering, how has spirituality helped you in that process, and even right now, are you even like, how is it like a connection, that connection you found going through that experience with spirituality, and how is it affecting you now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Now, this is where Russell Brand is someone that I like the way he talks about this, where oftentimes we're talking about climate change and we're talking about wealth inequality and we're talking about concentration of power. And a lot of times, sort of the spiritual aspect or spiritual revolution aspect is left out. And essentially, all to me, all of these things are that are like symptoms of sickness or symptoms of a sick society. Um, a remedy for that is to have healed, full people. And it, like I said, like if desire, my kind of original premise was that desire was the thing that is keeping us from being happy and also keeping us consuming to the point that we're literally about to break our planet because we just keep wanting things. And what I think has been really interesting to me is reading all these different traditions. It's like the flavor changes a little bit and the perspective changes a little bit, but the truth, there is a big T truth that they all kind of allude to. And when you hear different traditions from different times and different places, all kind of boiling down to the same thing, then I think it reinforces the idea that there is some um, deeper truth and that it's worth either like figuring out or abiding by, which in a nutshell, it's love, wisdom, and compassion.
I love that, man. Love always wins. So
Yeah,
right now we have some questions coming in for you from the
cool.
public. This question comes from via straw via straw. Ask, what mental resilience preparations did you undertake before embarking on a project like this?
Good question. Mental resilience preparations. Um, well, I'd already liked to do some, I already like adventure. So I
Okay.
mean, I previously had gone on like a 3 or 4 day hike up into like freezing cold mountains in North Carolina. I've previously slept in a park in London because I was at a party and missed the train. Um, I what other mental resilience preparations?
Did you undertake before embarking on a project?
Yeah, I mean,
So so did
I'm trying.
all of those things that you did before, you would say that that was kind of like building your your mental fortitude to kind of
Yeah, and
experience. Mhm.
I would say it kind of goes back to the spirituality aspect as well. I mean, I got into spirituality and I guess religion, these different things, because when I was a teenager, I felt like I became aware that we're all gonna die, and it seemed like the craziest, most terrifying thing. And then I kind of went about trying to figure out what it's all about. And I think that honestly, getting to those early enough, especially a lot of the sort of Buddhist principles of non-attachment and or basically not clinging on to things, and that, for instance, like something could be hot or cold or comfortable or uncomfortable. If you have the right mindset, then you can ride out all of those equally. So I'd already started developing those, and now it was almost like this is the time to put it to the test, because I did have a time, and I've actually included some bonus features on the stream now, but there's like a night where there was a termite hatching in my hut, and
Wow.
I had to just like sleep outside. There's another night where I was rebuilding my shelter. I didn't get it done in time, and it poured raining. And I had like a little towel that obviously got soaked, and I had to spend the night literally like kneeling down like this because it was so muddy and wet. I couldn't lie down. And I remember just thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, this is not a catastrophe. This is just uncomfortable. And you've chosen to be here. You know, no one's forced you to be here. You're here of your own will. It's just uncomfortable. This is going to pass and it's going to be fine. And of course, it was. But again, it's just a mindset recalibration, essentially.
Right. All right. So we have another question for you.
Hmm.
The question is from Jamon. Can you compare the attitudes, or was there a shift in attitude towards the Karen Lagos in Dominica pre/post Maria from the majority population?
From my understanding, from what I know, I wouldn't say there was necessarily too much of a shift one way or another. Um, I mean, Vonnie maybe can correct me if I'm wrong, but especially during that time, I mean, we weren't really able to travel around that much. So most of the time, I did not get to go over to the Kalinago territory for a while um, after Maria. Um, I think if I understand what's being alluded to in Dominica, it's not, while the Kalinago, um, are mostly agricultural and do live, like, know how to live off the land. I think there's still a lot of African descent Dominicans that also have this knowledge. So I think, all in all, I think it was more a little bit of a flip, especially for the younger generation, of just recognizing that this knowledge that their parents or grandparents were always talking about, all of a sudden they realize the actual utility of it, myself included.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
think the Kalinago people were particularly harshly affected by
Mm-hmm.
by Maria as well, for various sort of socio-economic reasons. In particular, that many of them were dependent on tourism, sales of craft work for their income, and many of them were living in, I think that's the area where you have the most the least sturdy buildings and structures. So
Yeah.
they really did suffer quite severely with the impact. And plus, they got it particularly harshly on the West Coast, didn't they, Michael?
On the East Coast, yeah.
On the East Coast, sorry, yes. So
Yeah.
so in all of those ways, although I don't know about attitudes shifting towards them, but I think they really did have a sort of really compounded set of circumstances, and took that area of the country seemed to take the longest to recover and build back, didn't it,
Yeah,
Michael? Because they don't have such strong diaspora and connections that came in really, really importantly for that recovery period. Yeah, so but I was going to ask again about while we were on the sort of spiritual aspect, and Michael and I have spoken about this before, but the aspect of like being in the forest on your own with only natural elements. Even though you'd got some mental preparation, some aspect of a sort of incorporating the Buddhist philosophy and understanding, did the actual experience of being in that situation kind of give you any special spiritual experiences?
Yeah.
In terms of, I kind of know what I'm alluding to. I just
Yeah,
love
yeah,
you
yeah.
to
Yeah.
take that up.
Yeah, I think so. The main one, well, like one of the main ones is, I think that we live, even if we have nature around our homes, just by nature of spending most of our time either in an office, a concrete house, or a car, we are separated from the processes of nature. But when you're literally living in nature, it's like you're seeing the whole cycle and all the processes all the time. You're seeing things being hunted, things hunting each other. You're seeing things being born and dying. You're seeing fungi, you know, break down dead trees. And I think what you realize all of a sudden that, I think Alan Watts put it some way, it's like you're not a stranger to this thing. You are a part of this thing. And I mentioned something in the film of being a part of a living matrix. And I think, to me, that's a really powerful thing, to no longer feel like a stranger to this world, but that you actually belong in it. That was quite a powerful experience. Go ahead.
That's one of the aspects or the outcomes, isn't it, of the initiation that you were talking about earlier. That you transcend in a way the physical or the presumption or the assumption that we're physically separated from each other and from our environment, and you actually experience the connection, which can't actually really be put into words.
Right.
But that experience is fundamentally life-changing and also life-informing and life-affirming. And when you've had that experience, then it sort of shifts the way you see your perception of things, your relation, the way you relate. And I was quite interested to know, through the film, that's quite difficult to put into even a film, isn't it? As it's difficult to put into writing. But if it was during the filming and through the film that shift also took place, if you know, whether you're seeing a sort of dual perspective, because when you're seeing something through the lens of a camera, or you're considering making a film, or you are filming on a daily basis as you were, how that in itself can reflect that sort of, you know, spiritual connection, that existential connection with your environment.
Well, so that's a really interesting one. I think it kind of boils down to all art at the end of the day, because so much in the beginning you have to be trying to perfect your craft, but essentially what you're trying to do towards the end is, if you're witnessing big T truth, and then you need to be able to try and have the skills with whatever your medium is, to not have to focus on that so much, but to be able to try and capture the essence of whatever it is that you're seeing or experiencing, and then capture it and translate it for your audience.
Beautiful. I certainly felt that working with you on the Dominica vetiver story, that came through. You know, I thought that is why you're such a joy to work with, because I really sense that your intuitive connection with nature, your intuitive connection, you're kind of sensing before assuming and judging. You know, you have this beautiful way of absorbing and being reflective in motion, you know, even as you're working. I love that about working with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can see how the experience, you know, in making Uncivilized could have nurtured that as well, and or at least strengthened the your use of intuition, or your reliance on intuition in subsequent projects.
I just want to say, it's really an honor to just be around you guys, just hearing you guys talk about your works, and the important work you guys are doing, and the light that you're shedding on, or you're putting on Dominica, and what's happening. Very, very profoundly speechless to just witness, and you know, and just want to say really big ups to you guys. The real feel that you guys are bringing the blessings, you know. It's amazing. It's amazing. Right now, I just have some more enjoying your comments on the adventures experience you seek out. What more piece of work have you found challenges with lockdown, with the current lockdown? Yeah.
Cool. What do I plan to inspire my next pieces of work? Well, I would say a lot of times I guess I guess somewhat you can plan inspiration, somewhat you can't. I mean, already recently I just met someone who was led to me through seeing some of my work. And we did some photography together. He's this Jamaican American kayaker who's doing really amazing, like sort of grassroots work, and really sees the picture clearly. And honestly, just having conversations with him in the last couple of weeks has been a lot of inspiration. So one, I would say, again, just kind of keeping yourself open and following your intuition leads you to the right people and leads them to you. I think the other thing I've been trying to do right now, actually, so lockdown hasn't given me that many challenges work-wise. I think just from riding the wave of releasing Uncivilized last year, I've been busier than ever. Plus trying to do like, I do work with the White Kubali Artists Association and SHAPE, which is the Society for Historic Architectural Preservation. So with all of that, I'm realizing I'm trying to now carve out time for writing a script, which is what my main goal is for this year. And then also I'm reading this book called The Complete Artist's Way, which is essentially talking about all of us having creativity, and this essentially the creator giving us limitless creativity, but us having to make some space for it. So just again, trying to rearrange my time and my space to give myself a little more breathing room to let those creative juices flow. But yeah, I have lots of plans for new stuff, and as new information comes in, it's all being incorporated. When we'll see it, I don't know, but I'm working away.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to just seeing it, and kudos to you on that process, and just keep going. We have another question here from Karen. How has filmmaking helped your process? How has filmmaking helped you process the constant changes in your life?
Mm.
I wonder, so I guess it's an interesting, I'm not sure if it has, but what I would say is that to me, there's something with filmmaking that means being curious and paying attention. And then I would also say with the experience of Uncivilized is seeing that even in crisis, there's opportunity. And so I'd say with those things combined, like for instance, when COVID happened, we were supposed to have an art exhibition that we were like, we can't do this now. Instead, just like with the film festivals, we did an online virtual art exhibition. And what we did is we got a 360 camera and actually staged the exhibition in this church that was damaged by Maria, recorded it with this 360 camera, and then put it online and put buttons through everything, made it fully interactive. So you can grab on the screen, look around in a direction, click on stuff, and we're able to get our show out to way more people than we would have if we did it just in Dominica. So again, it's like in every sort of crisis, there's always ways to spin it. And if you take a look in America right now, unfortunately, there's a small handful that really know how to capitalize on crisis and have made billions and billions and billions of dollars, while the rest of us are sucking salt.
Yeah, man. As a filmmaker, we always have that ability to change, to reflect, I think, and reflect in just numerous ways. And this, even right now, this is part of that reflection, is a part of that process, And I always believe like art isn't art unless someone sees it, and filmmaking and just having your film reach this process, the distribution process, and you getting this reflection when you entering it in festivals, you're hearing people's reactions and everything. How has that I would say completed journey, well, that's still going on, how has that impacted you? How's that feel for you?
There's definitely there's a sense of validation for sure. I'm not gonna lie. Like just one, when you tell people you want to be a filmmaker, let alone that you're going to go and do an experience where you're living in the bush. I mean,
Yeah,
the amount of time, I'm sure you've had it too. People are like, why don't you get a real job? Like, this is
for
crazy.
sure,
Da, da,
for
da,
sure,
da.
for sure. In Barbados,
Um,
it's yeah,
yeah,
man. Yeah.
yeah. So to kind of be on, I mean, I'm not exactly where I want to be yet, and I don't think I should be anytime soon, but to be getting sort of that kind of feedback, um, it's, yeah, it's really great. And it helps me to know, again, that, you know, I took a risk choosing this as a career, but again, I listened to what was down here
Mhm.
and it was correct. So,
I mean, I can definitely vouch for the fact that in Dominica, anyway, among Dominicans, Michael is very well known and recognised wherever he goes. It's
He's a
been,
superstar, man.
yeah, Uncivilized has been screened in Roseau itself, and so quite a few Dominicans have, you know, got to see the film in a cinema setting, even. So he's very well known and very well loved through the making of that film, and the shared experience that it has, you know, encapsulated for so many. But also, I was going to ask about what during I left Dominica like 2 days before Hurricane Maria, but I came back 3 weeks later. And just talking to so many people who went through that, Michael, it seems to me that everyone in Dominica for that period of hours thought that this could be the end. You know, this could be my final night. You know, and on a collective level, on a national level, that collective trauma is really significant. And how do you? I have a feeling that that film, for so many, provided some sense of healing. You know, and I think the reactions and the love that you get from people and the response and the, you know, what you were talking about before, feeling the affirm, you know, the affirmation, I think it comes from that. I think, and that's why I think it's such a groundbreaking, incredible film, is that it's reflected, it resonates for practically everyone in Dominica who was there in Maria, and even those of us who came shortly afterwards, because we lived through it by, you know, we were on WhatsApp to people who were there, and people were taking refuge in our homes, and, you know, so we were sort of definitely psychologically there, and especially in the aftermath. So I wanted to make that comment about, I think, the film is phenomenal for that reason. You've provided a healing for so many Dominicans. Also, the aspect of adventure. The virtual exhibition that Michael put together is absolutely brilliant. It's exciting. It's an adventure in itself. So I was like, adventure is a recurring theme in Michael's work. And, you know, treading new territories, man. Michael does that so brilliantly. So yeah, onwards and upwards to in adventure.
I think, again, this goes back to what I was saying of, like, I mean, that was my first time doing a virtual exhibition or using a 360 camera, but having done all those other things of building a shelter for the first time, and making fire for the first time, and making a film for the first time, like I said, once you've done your enough first times, then you realize you can do so many things. And especially, we live in such an amazing age right now where anything you want to learn is online. Anything you want to learn is online. And so it's, to me, a lot of the time, like, the, I'm not saying that there aren't still barriers, but for a lot of us, we are our own main barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So we have another question for you, Michael. This one is from Tracy. She's asking, what are you excited about when you look at the filmmaking landscape in the Caribbean? Any artist collectives or organizations besides Hairouna that we should be looking out for?
Yes, 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 yes. So get your pencils down or your notepads out.
Yeah.
So first off, I have to give a big up to the Waitukubuli Artists Association, which is at Kubuli Arts on social media. This is a collective in Dominica that formed around Hurricane Maria. And we've been able to pull off some really cool exhibitions, workshops. There was actually recently a regional OECS virtual photography exhibition, and there was about 4 of our artists participating. Film Co. in Trinidad is a great resource. I've actually did a screenwriting workshop with them that actually got me kickstarted on finally writing the script after I'd read tons of books, but to actually get a course on it with being taught and structure was fantastic. There's Kingston Creative in Jamaica. It's doing a lot of great things. And then someone I personally am following is, her name is Gabrielle Blackwood. She is a director of photography in Jamaica who I think she got her master's of cinematography or directing in New Zealand. She shot Savannah's Mango music video, and she's really cool in that I think I did a workshop with her through Film Co. And then from following her, she often kind of posts what her setups are, you know, lighting and camera and other things like that. So it's always really cool when there's someone who's further ahead in the game and is willing to share that knowledge with the rest of us.
Wow. Well, thanks a lot, man, Michael, man. Like,
Yeah.
sharing that information and everything is very, very inspiring, you know. And even for me right now, my personal filmmaking journey, you know, I went to St. Vincent for like the first, well, technically like the third time, but first time really to kind of discover my roots. You know, my grandmother, she's Colonel Lago, and from my dad's side, there's some Colonel Lago ancestry there. And from when I went to St. Vincent, I basically discovered Hairouna. I went there for the film festival, and it was for my birthday as well. I said like, this if there's one birthday gift I got, I gotta go and check out the film festival. But from that is the first time it's happening in my dad's homeland, you know. And I went there, and I was completely just blown away by the efforts and the hard work that these guys are putting, the Hairouna team they were putting in for showing films in the communities and everything. And it really like it impacted me. It hit me hard, especially as a filmmaker, you know. And going back home to like where my dad's, where he was from, and it was just on like this really crazy journey, because before that I was in Trinidad Film Festival, and I was actually supposed to go to Dominica with a friend of mine who was his first time leaving the island in Barbados. He was going to Dominica to be with his girlfriend, and he was caught in Maria, and I was just there like, you know, I was in the film festival in Trinidad, and like my closest friend was in this like this Hurricane Maria, and I don't know if like we're gonna see him again. I was feeling bad because like when I was supposed to go there by Misty flight, and then I was scheduling the flight, but then it was like talk about a lot of bad weather, and then I was like, maybe I shouldn't take it. Something just told me to just, you know. And then a few days later, it was like the hurricane, and man, you know, so I just this whole journey as a filmmaker, and just even having the opportunity to talk to you about it, for it to come full circle for me, and hearing about indigenousness and spirituality, and the major thing that I'm learning is to overcome fear. Like there's a lot of fear when it comes to filmmaking, going out there and chasing that idea or pursuing that idea, and having the resilience to really, you know, push forward and go for it, you know. And I've learned that yesterday with the screening, the guys in Haiti. I don't know if you saw it. They were like they shot this film in Haiti, and there was a lot of like, you know, there's a kidnapping and different kind of stuff is happening just to produce this film. And then yourself, you know, you went on a journey as a filmmaker, and then you were caught in this hurricane, and you came out of it. So it's just very, very inspiring for me personally. I just want to tell you that publicly, man. Like props to you, big ups to you, man. You know, like for real, yo, for real, man, for real.
No, I really appreciate it. And, you know, honestly, that was, people ask about like the scariest element of the whole thing. The
Yeah.
scariest element was making my first like big film. That was the scariest part, and not knowing everything that what I'm doing, and just being like, I'm out here alone, and I'm still facing major anxiety because I don't know if I'm getting what I'm supposed to be getting and everything else. Like that's
Bro,
where
So,
that's where the fear
I'm getting,
comes.
I'm getting
so,
goosebumps, bro, because I feel you, man. I feel you on that, and it's
so Michael, Hurricane Maria paled into insignificance then
that's
in
what I'm
comparison
saying.
to this.
That's what I'm saying.
This
He's
fear of
comparing a filmmaking to like that is a serious thing. We gotta be real with it, guys, because
Yeah.
filmmaking is such a. I'm really discovering filmmaking is such a very very serious art form. You know, it not only causes us to reflect within ourselves and face ourselves, but then it's like you know that outward projection of people. You know, you watch the people watching it and whatever. If you're a filmmaker, you care about what people think, whatever. But man, it's just
But it's transformational, Vonley, isn't it?
I
As you're
know, bro.
saying, on so many levels, it's transformational in terms of the artists themselves, the team who collaborate, and then the message has that potential for transforming attitudes and experiences and resonating with the audience in such a powerful way. And literally, yeah, this is how art can build on our heritage, as well as one of the questions we had in a previous panel, and connecting us with nature as well. Is that link, isn't there, between the various art forms and media and our interaction and response with nature. In fact, art reflects that relationship that we have with nature. And I think that the more artists that are working with this kind of powerful theme of transformation through nature are really serving the communities well in the future, in terms of giving us instruction and guidance as how we are most likely to be able to survive in the future as well. But Michael, in I don't know how much more time we have left, but
they said we have about 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Well, I'd love to hear, if it's okay with you, what main points or experiences or lessons you would like the audience who watch Uncivilized to leave with, or is it something you would just throw out there and say, well, what you make of it is what you make of it? But I'm sure that you may have some key points that you want them to leave with the film.
I would say that you always have all the answers within you. Sometimes you have to journey out to return to find them. But yes, we have all the answers. That probably the most important thing is presence and awareness. And once you have those, you have the power in your hands to sort of change your reality, essentially, to decide whether you're going to look at what you don't have or what you do have instead. And also in that same being present and having awareness, it's like even in such a tragedy where so much is lost, it's like you need to be aware so that when it's good, you can appreciate it. And so that when it's gone, you don't look back and say, damn, I really wasted this life or this time or these people, but that you do everything with intention. And last thing I would just also like to throw out, side note, if people go to uncivilizedfilm.com and subscribe, I'm gonna give the first 20 people a 50% discount code for the film. So probably they've already seen the film, but you can pass that on to a friend. And yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for having the courage to do that. And you've really, taken so many people along a journey with you. And I know your work will continue to have that role in our communities and much further afield. Thank you so much.
I just have one last quick question for you. This
Mhm.
is a bit of a random question. I'm personally
Cool.
just throwing in there. Were there any mosquitoes on your journey? Like any serious mosquito? Was it like the insects? Like what was the experience? Were you like did you get bite a lot by insects, mosquitoes, the centipede? Like what I saw like it was like a little a lizard, like a Komodo dragon running around in there in the film earlier. I just want to kind of get a, you know what I mean? Like what was that?
Yeah. So as much as I'm ashamed to say, I did bring bug spray, and if I knew later on, I would have brought citronella, but I just didn't even think about it at the time.
Oh my God.
Mosquitoes could be a pain in the ass at times. Nothing else was an issue. I never got bit by a centipede. I did wake up to a crab crawling over my foot. I did almost step on a boa constrictor, but it was just mosquitoes. They're a pain in the fucking ass. Part of my French.
Yeah. But thank you very much, Michael, for joining us, and thank you for all the questions for the viewers and everything. And Vonnie, it was amazing just being in this space with you and seeing
Thank
you
you so much.
I have a really cool experiences when I saw you back then in Vinci
Yes, that was wonderful.
film screening back then. I'll hold that memory dearly. But yeah, bless up to everybody.
Blessings. Thank you so much, both.
And I just got to thank both of you, honestly, for really thoughtful questions, really great conversation. And thank you for everyone that's still around watching right now. Much appreciated.
Yeah, man. Bless up and keep safe.
Blessings.